I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Don't Know Her podcast.
And this is going to be a pretty special one because we're doing something different for this episode. Something brave as well, I'd say. We're going to talk about a heterosexual man.
Oh my heavens. How far have we come to have gotten to this point? You'd think we were scraping the barrel, but no, we're not there yet. The barrel is still plentiful, but here we are with the straight men.
Exactly. And before we go in to talk about this particular person, how are you doing today?
I am good, thank you, Michael. Feeling the chill that is setting in now, but I guess to be expected. The nights are darker. It means I'm all the more cozy for being snug in here recording with you.
Yeah. Or watching movies, preparing.
Exactly.
Some delightful, some less so. Some very straight shit that we had to watch. I do not hate straight people as much as it might sound like I do. Anyway, speaking of which, of straight people, who are we talking about today?
We are talking about John Leguizamo.
Yes, and he is, if we have to talk about a straight man, he is been on the top of our pile for a long time.
Yeah.
It is a big anniversary for Moulin Rouge this year, so that's one reason he was at the top of our pile. But also, he's just someone that deserves to be more famous, and we will talk about why and the sort of films. But what a career, and all the people he's working with, and he seems like a genuinely lovely man, and he's so talented. So yeah, no, I am very excited to talk about John.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's whereas we can have some folk that we chat about on the podcast who we feel are like typecast or doing the same sort of things, that's definitely not the case with John. It's wild how versatile and how different he can play his parts. It's a wonderful thing. He is, I guess, the definition of a character actor. I guess that's quite an American way of looking at things, whereas we would probably just call that acting in the UK. But that sort of he goes into characters and he really plays into those. He doesn't play safe. He goes big very often, and with that is incredibly memorable in pretty much everything he's done where he's been given the space to do that.
Exactly, and something he talks about when he's interviewed often is how he has chosen roles from very, very early on to avoid stereotypes of Latino characters. And really, when you think about it in that perspective, it is even more surprising, the amount of roles and the amount of versatility he's been able to show in a I guess industry that really does not highlight non-white stories at all very often. But he is just so talented, and it's just so to watch him shine is a real joy.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a good time. What was your getting with John Leguizamo? Can you remember your first noticing him?
Of course I can. I feel like this would be the same with people our age, but Romeo and Juliet, him as Tybalt, which we will definitely be talking about. This is Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Plus Juliet. Romeo plus Juliet.
Isn't it William Shakespeare's Romeo
yeah.
plus Juliet from 96? Really I really love that film, of course. And then Moulin Rouge is anyone connected to Moulin Rouge in my mind is just as big as anyone could be in Hollywood and will have such a great place in my heart. But God, him as Toulouse-Lautrec, and the energy, and yeah, so he had a very kind of permanent place once I knew him, but I did not know kind of other parts to his career. So some of the movies we'll talk about just are kind of would never have been in my kind of perspective as a kid.
No, no, that's fair enough. I actually didn't see Romeo plus Juliet until I was maybe 16 or 17 in English class at school. So my first was Ice Age, where he voices Sid the Sloth. And watching that when I was far younger at primary school, probably roughly when it came out. And at the time, gosh, I was a big fan of Ice Age. I was very charmed, especially by him in it. I thought he did a wonderful job voicing the playful and silly sloth.
Yeah, and that was before like sloth became really cool as well.
Yeah, he did it
Like
before
he
with
like
cool.
predated it. I love it.
They're too trendy now. The hipsters got hold of the sloths.
Mm. What does sloth to do with John? John opened the door for sloths everywhere.
And thank heavens for it. But anyway, let me give us. Let me give us. Let me give us. God, I'm already scrambled. It's been a long day.
Put an emphasis on a different word in that sentence, Scott. One more time.
So let me dive into the career, or a little wee rundown into the career of John Leguizamo. So he was born on the 22nd of July, 1964. What a day to be born. I only realised today that he is a shared birthday with myself. So yay, John. Glad to have you on the 22nd. Born in Bogota, Colombia. But when he was 4 years old, his family moved from Colombia to New York City, which then really went on to cement a lot of who he became and what we then knew him as a performer and actor. After he graduated from high school, his theatre career kind of took way when he was an undergraduate at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. But he then left this, I guess, fairly early to take up a career as a stand-up comic in the early 80s, working within primarily the New York comedy scene. One of his earliest acting gigs, though, was in Madonna's Borderline video in 1984. What a treat for everybody. And then sort of a similar time making his TV debut in an episode of Miami Vice in 1986, and then followed on by a string of smaller roles in films. And this is where it started to take off. We see him in Die Hard 2, regarding Henry, and then really sort of taking off in 1993, where he is a co-starring role in Super Mario Brothers as Luigi. And the same year as that, having a prominent role in Brian De Palma's Carlito's Way. Following on from here, he went on to have a pretty busy film career, I think it's fair to say, starring as drag queen Chi-Chi in Tu Fong Wu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar in 1995, as Tybalt in, as you mentioned, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet in 96, and also again with Baz in Moulin Rouge as Toulouse-Lautrec, and Sid the Sloth, as I've mentioned, in Ice Age, and then a variety of other kind of noteworthy entries, some of which we'll talk about on the pod here, some we may not so much. But these include M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening, The Lincoln Lawyer, the John Wick films, Chef, and Sisters. Leguizamo also had a noteworthy TV career, picking up an Emmy along the way for his autobiographical stand-up piece Freak, which was directed by Spike Lee from his onstage special. He has also starred in ER, The Kill Point, When They See Us, from Ava DuVernay a few years ago, and Bloodline. And then one that surprised me, that he was cast as Derek or Del Boy Trotter in a US remake of Only Fools and Horses, which really threw me, but I don't think this made it beyond like an extended TV film that I reckon has maybe since been buried, and perhaps for the better. Alongside this, I mean, busy man, he's also had a very successful theatre career, and kind of off the back of that in 2018 was presented with a special Tony Award for his body of work and for his commitment to bringing diverse stories and audiences to Broadway for over 3 decades. So that's like a really lovely award, actually, and I'm sure very deserved. So that is just a little dip into John Leguizamo.
Yeah, but before we go into the films, just to like something that's been really striking when we're searching him and his career and choices he's made and like that award you mentioned from the Tony Awards is his like dedication and like he's so kind of he's a spokesperson and that sounds like a very kind of passive I guess or whatever word but very like fights for recognition not just for himself but for the Latino community for Latino actors and I just am so taken by that. He's like, for instance, there's a few interviews where he calls out Steven Spielberg for not having Latino characters in like Band of Brothers. He's like, you can have this many hours of TV, and there's all these Latino people that are definitely in it in history, but where are they in your stories?
Right.
And then calls out specifically probably the most powerful man in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty brave thing to do.
Definitely.
I think. So it is such a shame that cinema, or in Hollywood in particular, hasn't been able to give him the platform that theatre has, he's made for himself in theatre. And yeah, so there's a lot of his stuff recorded, as you've said, and some of it is on Netflix, like the recent Latin History for Morons stand-up. So I recommend, delve into that. But we're not going to focus on that because we focus on movies. And I guess maybe the best place to start is this big year of his.
Yeah.
So doing Mario Brothers or Super Mario Brothers and working with Brian De Palma, who is like one of the, at this time in particular, like such a big filmmaker to be working with in a movie with Sean Penn and Al Pacino playing a really significant part in Carlito's Way. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know which one to start with because they're so different. Like Super Mario Brothers, he comes in and he's just real charming. Like you have Bob Hoskins is playing Mario, and he's the more serious one. He's got his like act together, trying to get work because they're plumbers, which still shocks me that they're actually plumbers. Because as for those who do listen to the podcast, you'll already know we did watch this movie for Fiona Shaw, who plays one of the villains, and I'd never seen it before. So watching or reminding myself of it for this, I was still like, God, this movie is wild. Not least that they are actually plumbers trying to find work that stumble upon this underworld. But he's really charming. Like, I just find him so charming in this movie, and it's he easily could be a leading man, more so than we've seen him in his career. Based solely on this film, which did not do very well, is pretty crap, but was the first game adaptation. Back in the early 90s, you wouldn't have adaptations of known entities like this, like we would now. Mm-hmm. Like, aren't we having a Monopoly movie? That's how desperate we're getting.
Are we?
I don't know. Maybe I'm making shit up now. But back then, this was really rare, and he does so well. I just love him. He's so lovable.
He
and
is.
The scene where like they're at the police station and they're trying to like figure out, like they're trying to get their name.
Name? Mario. Last name?
Mario.
Okay, what's your name?
Luigi.
Luigi?
No, Luigi Mario.
Okay, look, how many Marios are there between the two of you?
There's three. There's Mario and Luigi Mario.
Mike! Up these Marios around the side.
You're like, what's going on? But he plays it just so well.
Yeah, it is sweet. I mean, hey, I still don't like this film. I wasn't inclined to rewatch it. But I rewatched him, and he is lovely in it. And what you're saying about thinking that he should have been launched maybe in a different way off the back of this. Like, he does play it's really boyish and charming in a way that if it was to be now, in the kind of era of our boyish leading men, he would take off so much. He would be cast in everything off the back of this if it were to have happened now. Maybe if it were of different quality, perhaps. But he is just really charming and sweet, and you're just glad to see him. And he's very attractive in it. It's an interesting thing, this Super Mario Brothers situation, because hey, tonally it is a million miles from the game. It is quite something. Whereas,
Well, I'm not sure what is it. Like, it's just such an odd film. It's like Terry Gilliam's Brazil for children or something.
yeah,
It doesn't work in short.
No,
Dennis Hopper's the
no.
villain with Fiona Shaw. It's all not great. I do recommend you go back and listen to our Fiona Shaw podcast because she is a hoot in it and this awful kind of part as well. It's just such a strange film. And then like I can only imagine to go from that and Carlito's Way, like this is just so different and it's so like he comes in as an antagonist basically to Pacino. He wants his girl back because Sean Penn's having sex with her in the toilet. The thing is, nobody has asked this woman what she wants. We don't really know, but this is the sort of movie we're watching. We are doing a straight man after all. These sorts of things will happen. And so he's like, so they basically get very aggressive with each other, and it kind of, he's Benny Blanco's his name, which is a great name. And he is a presence in the film which plays an important part, let's say. Al Pacino should have killed him, would have been that's like, come on, kill him. This man is clearly dangerous. But he's like a live wire.
Why don't you get lost? Go ahead, snatch your purse. Come on, take a fucking walk.
I think the only problem here is that Steffi doesn't know where she belongs. Come on, Steffi, let's go.
Steffi belongs here, that's where she belongs.
I think Steffi's making a big fucking mistake.
He is such a live wire in this, and then I think this is probably more what did well for his career. I think the combo of things, because even though Super Mario Brothers was critically panned, it was, I think, fairly successful and watched at the time, so it sort of put him on the map. But Carlito's Way gave him that, I guess, cred for working with an auteur type director in the 90s. He's great and a million miles away already from what he was doing in Super Mario Brothers. He's like sniveling and just kind of he's dangerous. You sense it straight away. He's a volatile person, and you don't want to kind of mess with him. Scrappy, in a really scrappy sort of way, where he shouldn't be intimidating, but you can sense from him that you should be scared of him. You should be wary of this man.
You over, man. You fucking in the history books. That's what you are, man. So you might as well fucking kill me now, because if I ever see you again, I swear to God, I'm gonna fucking kill you.
There's something about him. He won't take no for an answer, which even though it's basically because he's so young and naive and eager, and that's where this danger comes from. He's so well cast in this film, and he really elevates it, I think, when he's in it. Pacino's doing exactly what you imagine Pacino to be doing in this sort of environment. But when you see John like come in and he does his thing, you're like, yes, the movie is gonna find steam.
Yes, exactly that. And he is both the kind of turning point of the film's narrative, but also brings it kind of full circle in a very intentional way. The film sets out to do this sort of full circle moment from the get-go, and it is John's character which does bring it all back around. Carlito is this gangster figure who's been put in prison for many years, and he comes out and he is looking to set himself on the straight and narrow again, finds himself romantically entangled with someone from his past, and wants to kind of move in a less problematic direction perhaps, and takes up as a manager of a nightclub. But of course that then is on the peripheries of what's to follow, and then it is John's character who steps in and sort of reawakens that side of his past.
And then if we're talking about like showing different sides to your talent, the following year is To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. Which he's playing a drag queen. So the film is led by Patrick Swayze and Wesley Snipes, who are drag queens competing in this very big tournament where like RuPaul like bestows the crown, and they both win this crown, and they have to go to another pageant across the country, and they take pity on John's Chi-Chi.
That little Latin boy in drag is crying. Find out why that little Latin boy in drag is crying. Little Latin boy in drag. Why are you crying?
Just because Latour, you're so pretty. You know, you're so pretty.
That's all. Yes, of course we're pretty, but why are you crying?
And they're like, oh, instead of us taking these fancy flights, we're going to go by car across country, the three of us. And it's a story kind of about them supporting Chi-Chi. It's kind of Chi-Chi's story in a way. I mean, they all have their own things going on, but I would argue that it's Chi-Chi's story, and it's about her flourishing and her finding purpose. There's the movie itself. I had not seen until I think you might have recommended it, like during lockdown.
No, it was. I
right?
think we both watched at a very similar time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, and I think I just thought it was going to be crap. But the film, it isn't crap. Like, it's not, it's very questionable. It's aged in loads of ways. The understanding of trans people and drag queens is, well, for the want of a better word, like unclear. Like, they're always dressed as women, but they refer to themselves as drag queens. But then Chi-Chi's character does seem to have more, like, of a trans storyline. She has a whole storyline which is realized quite well, I guess, for the time, with a cis man. Who thinks Chi-Chi is a woman, or cis woman, but the film is just not clear enough. Like, we don't really know what these people want or what they do. There is actually quite kind of a destructive sequence where Wesley Snipes says,
When a straight man puts on a dress and gets his sexual kicks, he is a transvestite. When a man is a woman trapped in a man's body and has the little operation, he is a transsexual. I know that. When a gay man has way too much fashion sense for one gender, he is a drag queen. Thank you. And when a tired little Latin boy puts on a dress, he is simply a boy in a dress.
And I like where that's coming from is quite a serious tone in the film, as if like this is it, because it was aimed at a straight audience. Like, you'll understand what we're doing here. It's like, but no, I don't think anyone really does.
No, and it's belittling. It's belittling that character, because it is John's character, Chi-Chi, that is maybe most definitively not just a boy in a dress, as you're kind of saying. There's a lot more going on there, and what he's bringing to it, and the performance he's given, which again is very different to anything he's done before, and he really sells it, and he plays it very well. He does a great job here, but that line just doesn't seem to sit well with what is actually going on.
No, because it's such a like generous and like open-hearted film in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know, there are still things where today, you know, it's upsetting to watch. So Chi-Chi's character has, as I said, this love story, but the arc of her, and which is promoted by Patrick Swayze's character, is that she must give up this boy so that he can be with who he should be with, which of course is this, you know, cis woman.
It's absolutely out of the question. Well, says you. You're not my mom, as I'm going, and you can't stop me. Oh, darling, you most certainly will not be going out with Mr. Bobby Ray. Well, why not? Why not? We got a lot in common. Oh, yes, like for starters, the same business in between your legs.
And it's a bit like, but why should Chi-Chi? Like, what about, why doesn't she deserve love that way? Do you know?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, this was made in the 90s, and they get stuck in this town after a police officer tries to does sexually assault one of the characters. They fight back. They think they've killed him. They haven't. And there's kind of a chase. They're trying to hide. There's this kind of carry on going. and they stop in a town where Stockard Channing is there.
Bliss.
Which, dreamy. It's just such a fun film for that reason. And then Julie Newmar turns up at the end. It's so good. And I have to say, Patrick Swayze, all three men are terrific. Like, when you read up about how they researched and, prepared for these roles, it is hard sometimes to watch straight men play drag queens and for it not to seem a bit offensive.
Yeah.
Or a lot offensive in the case of some. But they do such a brilliant job.
Yeah. And I mean, at this time, they weren't even probably thinking about it, unfortunately, about casting the correct performers to play the roles. So for them to have given it so much, and they are leaning on tropes and things like that, but it doesn't matter because I know, and especially in the case of, well, all of them, I think they're all doing a great job and they're doing very different representations of drag queens or gay characters, whatever it might be. But John especially is so in this. It is quite magnificent to watch and compare what he has done before this in, say, Carlito's Way or Super Mario Brothers, to then be playing this, and kind of the effeminate side that he brings to this character is bang on the money in many ways. He's doing wonderfully.
Yeah, they're just it's just so well portrayed, the three of them, and I feel like that is why the film works, really.
Yeah.
Because it's not a great film in lots of like, the ending is very satisfying. The opening is fun, but the being stuck in the town kind of loses steam. There's too many characters that they're trying to help.
Yeah.
And it's also like they're fairy godmothers, and you're like,
Yes.
but don't gay people or LGBT queer people who whatever any sort of non like heterosexual characters deserve to have that too. And the film seems to think, no, apart from Chi-Chi does have a glorious moment of transformation, which I won't spoil, but rewatching it for this, I was just smiling the whole time knowing it was coming. I do recommend the film, particularly if people love Drag Race and things like that. Like, this has a lot to offer that would bring a lot of joy to a lot of people.
Yes, it's a fun film to stick on, and I think it would delight many, as you say.
And then, so this is the thing about his career in the 90s. The following year comes Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and plus, sorry, I know you can't see this, but Scott gave me a look of like, you say and instead of plus again. Romeo plus Juliet, where he plays Tybalt, who is a cousin of Juliet from the House of Capulet, and is very much against the Montagues, of which Romeo is part of. So when Romeo and Juliet fall in love, he is not best pleased. And he plays quite a significant part. I mean, of course, in the play, if people don't know, a man called William Shakespeare wrote this.
Who?
Never heard of her. But
Don't know her.
But we'll do an episode on William Shakespeare films.
That's a fun idea.
But Baz Luhrmann has made it his own and put a real stamp, like a timestamp almost. It's like this 90s MTV hyperactive movie, and again John comes in as this, again, like Carlito's Way a bit, like as a live wire. There's an argument at the start, they're at a gas station, he's like, fuck this shit, I'm gonna really show you that I'm not playing around. And has like one of the most iconic lines in all of Shakespeare.
Peace. I hate the word. As I hate hell, all Montagues. And thee.
Bang, bang!
So yeah, and like he plays a very important part towards the end. I don't know if you can spoil a Shakespeare play or film, but for those who haven't seen it, check out Romeo plus Juliet.
Yes, it's definitely worth watching. I will say I've never been a fan of Romeo plus Juliet, and that's probably come up in the podcast before in talking about Baz Luhrmann, that even though I love the film we're probably going to mention very soon, Moulin Rouge, I don't really get along with his others, and this is one of them. And I'd initially thought maybe it was just from watching it in school, in class. I was just a bit like, ugh, even though it's not that kind of film at all. It's not this stodgy, obvious take on Romeo and Juliet. It is very big and loud and splashy and musical, and, you know, it's a good time. Very colourful, fun film. But I don't know what it was about it I didn't like. I just found it quite jarring and irritating. But then I was like, well, I'll give it another chance. And quite recently, maybe not that recently, me and my friend went and watched it on a rooftop in London in the pouring rain. So we were wearing ponchos. It was pouring with rain. But that made it very atmospheric. I felt like I was in the film. There are moments where it is quite dramatic, and the weather aided that along. But I was still like, no, I'm not sure it's for me. But it is a lot of people's, you know, favourites, especially from our generation. It is definitely worth watching. It's an exciting piece of work, and I think I am in the minority of not finding it as exciting as others. But John Leguizamo in this is incredible. He's definitely my favourite player in this big old cast. His entrance, as you've sort of described the scene at the petrol station, is magnetic. He is dangerous. He's just so there and so present. And he has these metal-heeled shoes when he puts out his cigarette and stamps on it, and it's just ingrained in my head, the noise it makes as his heel connects with the ground to put out the cigarette. His attitude for days is just, it is quite a thing to behold.
Yeah, he makes such a big imprint with this of like, this is what's at stake. So when we go to the party scene, and they, you know, probably most people will know it even if they've not seen the film, where Romeo and Juliet meet across a fish tank at the bathrooms, you know, like, shit, man, like, this is not going to go down well. Tybalt is going to not be happy here. But Tybalt's not even there, but his presence is still felt, and I think that's a real credit to John's performance. Well, yeah, let's go on to the next Baz Luhrmann film, because Moulin Rouge is like, blew the doors open for me as when I saw it when I was a kid, and I was like, you're right. And he's the character that's like, don't you believe in love? And he's like shouting it all the time, and like, he's just so, he wants to will this relationship between this penniless writer, Ewan McGregor, who's arrived at the Moulin Rouge, falls in love with Nicole Kidman Satine, who's a star, and she mistakenly thinks he's a duke, falls in love with him back, and they continue to have a secret affair while she pretends she's going to please the duke and marry him or have sex with him. But he comes in and he kind of allows it to happen and wants it to happen, and I just love him. I just love him in this film as Toulouse-Lautrec. And I know we talked about it with Kylie Minogue at the beginning, but obviously John's part, well, not obviously, but if you've seen it, John's part is way more, he's more present in the film. And he actually is the one at the end who like screams to like, do not leave, like stay and be in love and screw everything else, because all that matters is that you love each other.
So wonderful. I'm the same. I feel exactly the same about Moulin Rouge. It changed my world when I first watched it. I was just like, wow, this I'm on board with. The jukebox musical, which often you could be allergic to because it can be such a dull and uninspired thing. This is the opposite. This is just inspired to the max. It is big, melodramatic, exciting, romantic. It's what a time. And you're right, John is delightful in it, and again playing wildly different to anything else he's done, playing a real character, and he's adorable, and again very memorable. I think one of the most memorable performances in a very memorable film full of memorable performances, but he stands out big time. he's the driving force, as you say, for the message of the film. He drives that message of the belief in love. And with that, it's just, what a trip. I mean, I think most people listening have probably seen Moulin Rouge. If you haven't, please go and watch it. You'll hopefully have as wonderful a time now as we did watching it the first time about 20 years ago.
There is a point, I guess, which is worth mentioning, that Toulouse-Lautrec was only 5 foot due to health reasons. I mean, it seems like he had an awful lot of health reasons trying to research for this. But John Leguizamo is on his knees for a lot of it. There's like, during the spectacular sequence, you will know that, or you will be able to spot, everyone else is like moving forward and doing stuff, and he stays in one place because he is on his knees. So it's kind of the sort of part that he probably wouldn't play anymore. And I guess that's worth flagging. He has openly talked about Chi-Chi and Tu Wong Fu and saying like he wouldn't play, as he saw it, a trans person today, and that he wouldn't need to, that there's many other very talented people that be able to play that part. Yeah. But again, like Tu Wong Fu, that's never played for laughs. I don't know, it's kind of a respectfully done bit of casting. And I do find it impossible to think of him not in the film.
Exactly. Yes, exactly that.
It also did save him. Like, everyone else is like dancing and jumping around, like, and he is not doing any of those things. Which I assume, like, from seeing other things, he would be able to dance and stuff, but he just cannot. It's just the technology did not exist. Well, this is what's jumping to mind when I thinking of him dancing, is the Pest, because the Pest starts off with him dancing in a shower for so long, and the Pest is like the sort of title of a film, which I'm like, you could have added that to so many films of this time, or probably still today, of like just men. Like a man-child going through their day, causing havoc, and somehow thinking they're still charming.
Pest. Is that your name or a personality? It's great.
Well, my real name is Pesta Rivera Garcia Espinosa Juan Marcos Neruda Salsa Picante Chuleta Chancleta Salsa Picante Vargas, but you can call me Pestario. Pest for shorter. Now we even.
To give him the benefit, he is charming in this film, and he does get it caught up in this whole sort of craziness. So it's a real joy to watch him in it. But he does everything in it. It really makes me think like that The Pest is a sort of movie that, say, Jim Carrey, Mike Myers, these sorts of comedians that do a lot of improv, let's say, on set, I bet, can just let their personality fly. And it's a real shame that John wasn't able to get more opportunity to do that, because it would have been amazing. It's just a shame. The Pest is not a great story. He gets caught up in a mobster sort of gang thing. But say, I would love to have seen John Leguizamo in Liar Liar, or any of those sorts of things.
Yeah. I think that would make sense. That's a good way of looking at it. And you can even tell from the title that it's sort of, it would go back to those like Steve Martin, The Jerk, or, it's these kind of things. They do feel like of the same kind. Yeah, that's a good flag. He would be, in terms of how broad we've seen him act in films we've already discussed. I think it would come very easily to him to play exactly as you're discussing, these types in bigger Hollywood films than perhaps The Pest is.
I would say it'd come easy to him, but the crew around him might lose their patience. But the same with all of these people. Like, I do not imagine. I think they come on set, do improv, do a lot of things, which is great, and that that's not actually the sort of films I enjoy, but it's the sort of films he should have had the opportunity to make, because he would have excelled. And then, like, when we look at his career not post Moulin Rouge, even though I see everything as post and pre Moulin Rouge, but it's a real shame. Like, he's, for whatever happened, and I can't get my head around it. It's kind of like he took a back seat it's like he wasn't getting these exciting opportunities anymore. Like, as you mentioned, Ice Age, of course, is very exciting. He's voicing the lead character, but it's not really stretching himself in the same way as any of the films you just mentioned. And he has things like, I mean, I don't know which ones you want to talk about, but like The Happening, for instance, or any, I mean, God, he's like voicing an animal in Dr. Dolittle 2. He turns up for, like, in John Wick as a friend, kind of on the side, but, you know, he's never like as active as as I would like him to be, as he had been in the 90s.
Yeah, no, exactly that. These films don't do him the justice that we'd want after having seen those films at that time. But, I mean, hey, in terms of it being a time, I guess we have to talk about The Happening, right? We're never going to be able to talk about it again. So, The Happening, M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening involves an epidemic, the wind that sweeps in, an epidemic which causes people to suddenly be taking their own lives inexplicably. At first, it's happening in parks around cities and spreading outwards. So, Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel, who are a couple in this, have to flee to the countryside to escape the city and the problems that are going on. However, it follows them. And
God.
John...
Do you think, Scott, it's the plants?
Oh, God.
Sorry, guys. There's a lot more to it than just plants attacking people. But yeah.
But that's the gist. It's, I mean, hey, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to necessarily recommend it. But yes, it's basically the wind is bristling through the plants and making people kill themselves. I mean, it's quite something. And I'd heard always that this was a terrible, terrible film. Normally when you hear that, you're kind of like, oh, it's not going to be that bad. It was. For me, it was. And I know you're now going to defend it, so let me tear it apart so then you can defend it afterwards. It is... I mean, it's confusing. So there's maybe something going on with this film, and it should be read differently, and it's now being viewed in this way. And of course, it's sort of leaning into these old Hollywood horror B-movie types, and you can feel that with the hokiness of the acting, but then I'm just not sure because it's so weird. Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel in this are horrible. They are so horrible to watch in this. It feels like they're playing, because they've both done a lot of comedy work and goofball type comedies. Like, you've got Mark Wahlberg doing Ted and Zooey Deschanel in lots of things as her sort of quirky type that she plays. They're playing that in a film about a pandemic, like this thing that's making people kill themselves. Yet they are like oddballs, and it's so like weird. It's like I just do not get what's going on. When I was writing my notes, I just wrote like, what the fuck? Why are people speaking like this? And then again, like, this is meant to be a comedy, right? Is this meant to be a comedy? Because then I started to think maybe it was. And if this is meant to be a comedy, then I'm like, okay, I guess that's what it's doing with the old Hollywood B-movie horror type thing. But it's not. It's just not approaching that in the right way at all. And it doesn't read as that it's like winking at the camera enough. So
yeah.
In the direction I feel like you're going to go with defending it, I can respect that, and if that's how people want to read it. But it is just horrible. John, I will just say quickly, is compared to them, is fine in it. He's still doing, it's still weird, but with him, to me, you can go, it's the writing and it's the direction. Within there, you can be like, no, actually, you're fine. But it's this. It's what you're delivering is not fine, because the conversations he's having, there's this bit about the breakdown of Mark Wahlberg's marriage, and this conversation they're having. I'm like, what are they? Why are they talking like this? It's so stilted and weird, and it's clumsy.
Like, so Scott, if we say we're like hanging out and the world is about to end, or whatever is happening, people are killing themselves. This is the sort of movie it is. Like, that's when John decides to tell Mark that
I saw her on your wedding day.
Again with the wedding. What?
I walked into a waiting room by mistake, and she was crying. She looked up. I saw her face. She wasn't ready to jump in, Elliot. That's not who she is. She's never gonna jump in when you need her, man.
Why is this now the time? And why the dialogue, even if it now was the time, does it sound like you're just kind of like the conflict is this woman being upset? Do you know, like, or it's just so silly. I mean, yeah, you're dead right. You know exactly why I love it, because it's so silly. It's just so silly. I laugh along with it. I also watched M. Night Shyamalan's new movie Old in the cinema. Had a whale of a time because it's the same old kind of crap, like really bad dialogue, good actors, kind of struggling with the material, and mad things are happening. And then, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the resolution of both of Old and The Happening is just not described. Like, it's just like, oh, and this now is over. It's like, what? Like, we need more information to have a satisfying ending.
Oh, and it's like we're set up by M. Night's films to want a big twist, and then this one is sort of just ingrained throughout. So you're like, it's coming. At least this film has been horrible, but I'm gonna get a kick out the twist, and then it ends, and you're like, oh, I see. It was just the wind in the plants.
That is the twist, but see, the same trick is done in Old, and I. Honestly, watching, and I think you might have enjoyed The Happening more, or maybe if you had my experience with Old in the cinema and then watched The Happening alone, because in the cinema people were laughing at Old, we were having a great old time. It was like, this can't be happening, and I feel like that is the sort of B horror, cheap but not cheap movies that he's going to do. Like The Sixth Sense is behind him, as is Unbreakable, which I would say is his best film. And even The Village, which I quite like, is...
I really enjoy The Village, yeah.
So now he's just making these cheesy knockoffs.
But you see, I've not seen Old, but is this in the same register? Because I can imagine Old, from the trailers and everything, I feel like it knows what it's doing. The Happening to me felt... I mean, even though it wasn't earnest, because they were playing... The pair of them were playing like they were in a 1950s rom-com, but in it was like, what's going on? But it was just in this, I don't know, and I think it's more fun. It's so obvious of me to pick on a film which has already been torn apart since it came out.
Yeah.
And I'm all here for people defending it, but it is a load of old shit, and it's not. I get it. I think if I was watching it with other people, I might. Well, I would laugh along because it is funny. Like, what they're up to is funny, but it's oh man,
I love it. And I guess we should go. We won't get to talk about loads of it, but people will know John for so many movies. Like, he has the John Wick series, as we mentioned, Ice Age, Sisters. There's just so many films that he's involved in. Is there anything you want to talk about before we do the quiz?
No, I think we've sort of touched on my favourites and my least favourites of the pack. He's a wonderfully interesting guy, and I'm glad we've spoken about him. But yeah, so hey, if you're listening at home, you might be thinking, wait a minute, you didn't talk about his most fun film. Please let us know if that's the case.
So yeah, let us know whatever your favourites are. I'd love to hear as well back about John, because he's just such a varied performer with so many different types of films.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we should do a quiz.
Please, love me a quiz.
Test your knowledge. So actually, I'm usually very good at prizes, I would say. But I can't think of, like, is there something you'd like? I was thinking, like, maybe a night at seeing Moulin Rouge in the West End when it opens with John himself. Or, like, let's have the whole cast of Moulin Rouge there with you.
Oh, no, I would like it. I would like that very much. I do want to go along and see Moulin Rouge in the West End anyway, so that alone would be a satisfactory prize. But if I could take John and the whole cast and have them sit with me, and then they get up and perform an encore and do a couple of the numbers, yeah, that sounds fair. That sounds fair.
Yeah, it seems only fair. I feel like they're quite a loud bunch, particularly like Baz Luhrmann and John. They'd be like shouting the whole time through it or something. I don't know. They'd be rowdy.
Loud.
So we're going to have two parts. The first part is a series of kind of trivia questions. And the first one is, why did John give Sid, his character in Ice Age, a lisp?
Oh, gosh, I don't know why he did that. It's very, very memorable in my head. It's what I remember of Sid and this very fun and lively voice part. But I no, I'm not sure. Why did he give him a lisp? I wouldn't know where to start with that.
Yeah, this is a very big question, but I just want to share fun information.
Please.
It is about you winning as well. I'm so sorry, but the answer is sloth. When he was doing his research, he discovered that sloths store food in their mouth, so he thought that they would have a lisp if they spoke because of that reason.
Well, great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now that I'm saying it out loud recorded, I'm like, does that make any sense anyway?
No, it would do. If your mouth was full of food, he would probably have a slight slurring of the speech. And hey, he obviously went method, so great.
I love it. Okay, so the next ones, you're going to have a choices to make, so it's not going to be as broad as that one.
Okay.
So in high school, which of the following was John voted for? A, most charming. B, most talkative. C, most promising. Or D, most creative.
Oh, I think all of these he should be nominated for. My answer is E, all of the above. But I think the one which sits with me most is promising. Most promising.
You would think that, and he would deserve that, but no, it was most talkative.
It was talkative, okay.
Which I absolutely love. Next question. How long did John study with the famous, very famous acting coach Lee Strasberg in his studio? Is it A, 1 day, B, 1 week, C, 1 month, or D, 1 year?
I'm going to guess it's going to be short based on sort of this time studying before taking off to be a comedian. So a week, I think it's going to be weirdly short.
It was weirdly short. It was a day because
just
he
a
died.
Day.
Yeah,
whoa! Oh gosh. Okay, so that's why. Oh no! Oh my god, that's not where I thought that was going.
Yeah, John jokes about it in his stand-up and stuff, and it's like, I have that effect on people.
Oh my heavens.
Which is quite funny. And then my last question in this round is, what Oscar-winning movie did John turn down to do Super Mario Brothers? Is it A, The Piano, B, Philadelphia, or C, Remains of the Day?
Oh, Philadelphia, surely, of those three.
Of course, yes. He was going to be cast as Tom Hanks's lover.
Okay, that makes sense.
That went to Antonio Banderas instead.
Oh, I mean, hey, Antonio's great. It makes sense to me in that, but I would have liked to have seen John do that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, John jokes about it, saying like Tom Hanks wasn't hot enough for him, so he wanted Kevin Costner or someone like that.
Oh.
He's a funny guy. So the next round is called Name That Queen.
Oh, la 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 la.
So yeah, exactly. We have some clips, and I want you to identify the actor and or the film in the clip. And they're all playing drag queens. Some of them there's more than one actor, I should say, to identify. So, let's go with clip number 1.
I just find it hard to believe that you're a man.
Because you found me attractive as a woman?
Yes, as a matter of fact.
It happens frequently.
Not to me.
I'm so confused. I mean, that is a woman. I don't know what I don't know what this is. I can't.
So it is a woman, yeah. So this is. Do you want a hint, or do you just want to be told?
You tell me. Take it away. Go on.
It is the one, the only Julie Andrews in Victor Victoria, where she plays a singer looking for a job, and she can only get cast as a drag queen. So she is a woman pretending to be a man performing as a woman. Or as a drag queen.
Oh my god, of course it's her. That's so annoying. Okay.
It's okay, so you didn't get that, but let's try number 2.
Bitch, can you get down off that stage and come help me close this bar, please?
Don't talk to me like that in that bus driver wig, girl.
Oh, that one was far more brief than I was Okay.
There's also 2 drag queens in this.
Yeah, okay, great. Oh gosh. One of them sounds... Is it this? A Star Is Born? Is one of them Shangela?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Shangela's voice is very clear to me. Who's the other one? Ooh, who else is in it? Whose voice is that? Oh...
Would I give you a hint?
No, I can get it. Peppermint?
No.
Oh, it's Willem.
Yes, Willem. Yeah.
It's Willem. That's whose voice it is. Yes, the podcast voice. I knew it was very present. It's been in my ears before. Willem and Shangela.
They've been in my ear before. Well,
yeah, a few times.
Not shocking. Okay, so number 3.
I'll be home at last. Not a loser anymore, like the last time and the time before.
Oh, fudge. I think, because for someone to be singing, maybe this time from Cabaret, I think this is Toni Collette and... Oh gosh, what's her name? I feel so bad I can never remember her name from Big Fat Greek Wedding. What's her name?
Big Feet Greek Weddings. I'd love to see that movie.
The Big Feet Greek Wedding. And the film... Oh, shit, what's the film called again? Connie and Carla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie which I will it to be better than it is, so enjoy, but it's absolute crap. Yeah. Toni Collette deserves a full-blown musical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With that voice, sure thing. But still a very special film. A gift that you kindly gave to me during the lockdown. A surprise that came in the post one day was a copy of it on DVD. But before we did a chance to watch it and realised that it probably wasn't worth gifting.
Well, I'd already seen it. Spoiler, and I still think it's worth gifting. But thanks for your...
So you sent me your copy because you're like, yucky, you're getting rid of that.
No, I bought us both a new copy so we could watch. I do have a soft spot for it, but it is crap.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so last but not least...
I have to give a full-out performance, but everyone else can just get through it. I mean, he's chewing gum.
Chewing gum helps me think.
Sweetie, you're wasting your gum.
Oh, of course you wouldn't have been able to make it through that without. It is, of course, Nathan Lane in The Birdcage.
Yes, maybe my favourite of all drag queens on stage, Starina.
Starina is the best of the best.
And we have done a podcast on Nathan, so please go back and listen to that too. That was real fun.
It was a lot of fun.
So you, my friend, are going to the Moulin Rouge with the cast and crew of the movie.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, I don't know if I did well enough for such a gift, but I accept. Thank you.
It's all right. And actually, now's a good time to suggest people actually somehow buy us tickets and also buy Nicole, Ewan, McGregor, Jim Broadbent. We'd all love a ticket to Moulin Rouge. Find us online. Throw money at us.
Yeah. Me and Nicole are really struggling in particular.
Ugh, Nicole having a hard time. No more Chanel ads. So I guess let's talk about the future. And before we do that, let's just briefly mention that he has kind of 2 significant movies coming out, which is Disney's Encanto, the musical with music from Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is very exciting. And he also has The Menu, which is a dark comedy thriller directed by Mark Mylod, who is probably most famous for his work on Succession and Game of Thrones. And he's co-starring with Anya Taylor-Joy and Nicholas Hoult, Ray Fiennes, Janet McTeer, Judith Light, and many more in this film. So, there's some fun things coming.
Yeah.
But what can we add to this list? What do you have for us, Scott?
I struggled with this one because it was a lot of me just thinking he should be in this. because he hasn't already. Like Martin Scorsese or something, if you look back at, say, Carlito's Way or things like that, he does so convincingly, or even, you know, Romeo and Juliet, he does it so convincingly and with such gravitas that you would have thought that he would have been in a Scorsese film. So, hey, I'd be all for him being in a Scorsese film. That, I mean, gangster film or not, I'm absolutely sold on that. It feels like an obvious statement, but I don't know if I've used Scorsese. I probably have used him before, but if not, not often. So I would start there, but I then say, let's say, not a gangster film. That's the way in. That's how I've gotten into this idea. But I would be more interested in seeing him in, you know, one of Scorsese's not gangster types, like Hugo or things like that. He would have been lovely in something like Hugo, actually. If Scorsese wants to go back and do another family film, then I think it would be lovely to have John in it.
Yeah, he would be lovely, and that's why, like, Encanto, for instance, I'm very excited to see him. I know it's a voice role, but as this kind of, because he also talks about his children quite a lot, particularly his son, in interviews, and just the way he talks about it. And I don't know if you saw this, but when they When They See Us, the TV series.
I've not watched it actually yet.
Oh, his performance, like he's a father in that, and like he was Emmy nominated for his work, but it's really striking. I mean, that show is amazing in lots of ways, but he really is effective in it. So yeah, I agree. Oh, he'd be lovely in a thing like Hugo. Speaking of which, mine is similar but different, and also is something I've suggested before for sure. But Paddington 3. I feel like he has like a real warmth, I know, but also like it's very kind of silly slapstick humor that I think he'd be good at. I don't want him to play a villain though. I want him to be like somebody that, you know, befriends Paddington in some way, or it becomes part of Paddington's troupe almost. I've not thought much more about that, but I just think that it would be lovely to see him and Paddington hang out in London.
Yeah, no, I think that's a nice idea, and I can see it. But yeah, you do love returning to Paddington whenever you can. I then similarly, it was a lot of people I was like, oh, of course he's worked with them. I remember him working with them. And then I look and I'm like, no, he never has. The Coen brothers. I would love to see him in a Coen brothers film. And again, I'm like, wait, why do I remember him in a Coen brothers film, but he is not in a Coen brothers film? I would be delighted to see that. And again, surely an easy fit. I wouldn't be fussy. I think I would lean into it being preferably... Oh, I don't know. I would like to see both. I would like to see him in a darker Coen Brothers film, like a No Country for Old Men, as a villain type. I would be all for seeing him play evil, sinister, you know, the kind of Javier Bardem thing, but different, because his energy would be very different from Javier. So something where he can get his teeth into something creepy, sinister, interesting. But also, I would then like him to do one of their more lighter comedic type films. So, say I don't know, like I guess a Fargo is a mix of the two. It is still kind of on the darker side, but I like that balance of the humor. But I could just see him in any of the things they've done before. I really could. So, but I think something like that. I think something which would give him work that is complex and interesting, funny, layered, and the Coen brothers and him feel like they would be a match made in heaven.
I agree. One thing looking at his work, which I guess maybe he chose not to, but part of me thinks no, he just wouldn't be given the opportunity, is a romantic comedy type part. Which is why I was a little bit disappointed with Sisters, watching it for this, because I thought he had more of an active role. Instead, he's just kind of this kind of sex pest and this that they remember from school kind of character. But he would be like such a lovely partner for somebody in a rom-com. And I'm thinking something like Schmaltzy, something in the vein of like a while you were sleeping sort of thing, where like either he's the protagonist or he is the love interest, but it's just very silly. And like, I don't know if anyone, when I say while you were sleeping, people know what that kind of means, but that's the sort of film where she loves somebody, the guy gets stuck on a train track, she goes to the hospital to see him for no reason at all, and pretends that she's married to him, to his family, while he's in a coma. So I love this kind of like high concept, big hearted romantic comedy, and would love to see him. And I don't know who I would partner him with. I mean, don't get me started on women that could be great foils to him, but somebody like, why not a Sandra Bullock, or who is in While You're Sleeping?
Absolutely.
Like, could be wonderful. I don't know. I'm really all for him like showing more range, like something like To Wong Fu, than we get to see of him lately.
Yeah. Yes, I think that is a lovely idea, and I'm always all for romantic comedy suggestions, and I think that is a lovely one. The other one I came up with was one that he kind of has done before, a film we didn't talk about, called Summer of Sam, and directed by Spike Lee. And as we mentioned earlier, Spike Lee directed his specials, so obviously they've got this thing. I've not seen Summer of Sam. Maybe it's exactly what I'm hoping for, and therefore this is a redundant suggestion. But I imagine that's maybe, I think that focuses on murders that are taking place during a summer in New York in the 70s. I want more of the kind of, not necessarily lighter, but more of that trip down memory lane type landscape that Spike Lee's created of New York in other films like Crooklyn, which we mentioned when we spoke about Alfred Woodard. Or I guess kind of what we see in Do the Right Thing too, but that leans more into the kind of the heavier side. But I think with New York being so important to John and where he's come from, and defines a lot of who he is as a person, I think it would be wonderful to see a depiction of the Latin communities of New York. And maybe then Spike Lee's not the director, but I'm just thinking of that. But then maybe if we can get a Latin director to do something in the same gene as a Spike Lee film, I think that might be a dream kind of teaming of things coming together to tell a really lovely and fairly kind of untapped thing on the big screen. I know there was the big discussions around In the Heights from this year, and it's sort of it looking at the Latin community, and hey, there's a lot of Latin actors and performers in that, but then there was the kind of erasure of the Black Latin community and things like that. So maybe there's a film which is going to do better on that front, and it could be a musical if it wants to be. I don't think it would need to be, but something about that community and a kind of a love letter to that community, I think could be a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feels like with In the Heights, and I dread to think what Steven Spielberg's West Side Story would be like, but I feel like there has to be a turning point in terms of kind of Latin American stories being told in a more authentic way. And hopefully someone like John Leguizamo will be part of that, because he does that so well on stage. So hopefully film allows him to. And I really wish my last choice was anywhere near as progressive, but I'm going with an old reliable.
Go for it.
So somebody so I'm suggesting, like I've done before, Mamma Mia. You
need to be stopped. You can't do it twice for John.
No, but this is so specific.
Okay,
in that
go on.
When people were like suggesting that Mamma Mia 3 could focus on Cher's character and Andy Garcia's character back in the past, and it could be called Mamma Mia 3 Fernando, and it would be about that. Now, I'm imagining that John is part of this world. Like, he's either like the guardian that looks after the young Andy Garcia lives with, or the young Cher lives with. And he has his own, like, romantic problems, his own issues. And it's kind of, he's like a shadow almost of the main storyline. But he gets to have what I think is an amazing new song by ABBA, Don't Shut Me Down. So he like turns up at the door of someone and he's there, you know. I'm just going to read some of the lyrics because they're pretty special.
Please.
But he's like, I've been reloaded, yeah, I'm fired up, don't shut me down. I'm like a dream within a dream that's been decoded. I'm fired up, I'm hot, don't shut me down. So he's like singing this at the balcony, being like, come on. I love you, come back to me. And that's kind of as much as I've got, but that's probably as much as anyone had for Mamma Mia 1 or 2, and
then they rolled with it. So perfect.
So I think that would be, I just love to see him in such a broad, I guess that's what a lot of my things are, but broad parts and having fun, because he's well able to bring emotion to it, which I think is actually quite a hard thing for people, for many actors, but it comes so naturally to him.
Yes. So, as we say with many of the people we talk about on here, I will take all of this and then some. Like, let's be getting more for John. He can do it all by the seams of things. So why not?
Yeah, he should. Yeah.
Adventure. Why
it
not
was up to me.
that?
I would just hand him the budget to like $100 million to make whatever he wanted. He after the success of Hamilton, he was like, oh, maybe I should write a musical, and then he did, called Kiss My Aztec, which sounds pretty successful. Like, he just seems to have this huge creative energy and force, and it's so frustrating, which we do come across in other episodes done too, but it's so frustrating that the industry just does not allow someone like him to thrive, when we'd all benefit if he did.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. So why repress us and prevent us from having these delights? Come on, universe.
So where can people find us, Scott?
So if you would like to get in touch, as earlier mentioned, and let us know your favourite John films, things that we've missed in his interesting and varied back catalogue, or would like to suggest someone to chat about next, or just anything else you're feeling, you can get us on email at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media, and you can catch us over on Instagram or Twitter at don'tknowher_pod.
Yes, and please do leave us reviews, ratings, wherever you can. That really does help us. Like, we don't ask for money or any kind of subscriptions or anything like that, but we would love just as much support or sharing as you can. And if you can think of one person that you think would enjoy this podcast, please do share with them. But yeah, like, it's been such a joy, as always, hanging out with you and talking about these films, trying to figure out why the fuck the happening ever happened. It's all happening. But yeah, so please, everybody, join us next time when we'll be talking about, you guessed it, a woman, because we can't do 2 men in a row. That would be too much.
No, we would never. Alrighty, well, have a lovely day wherever you are. Michael, that goes to you as well. A pleasure as always. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.